Seniors, don't do this in the morning. Have you ever thought that something as simple as how you get out of bed could quietly put your health at risk? Most people don't. They wake up, stand up, grab their coffee, and start the day, without realizing that the first 5 minutes after waking can quietly set the stage for dizziness, fatigue, digestive problems, and even dangerous falls. But what if I told you that 5 tiny habits many seniors do every morning, without thinking, might be slowly draining your strength, clarity, and even independence? Today on Buddhist Health, we're diving into 5 of the most common morning mistakes older adults make, often unknowingly. We'll talk about why jumping out of bed too quickly could affect your heart, how skipping water impacts your brain, why that cup of coffee on an empty stomach might be doing more harm than good, and how small changes in posture or stiffness can ripple into long-term pain or peace. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the end, because the final mistake is one that almost everyone overlooks. But it's the one that can quietly shape the way you age, mentally, physically, and emotionally. What makes this video different is the advice and how we approach it, through modern science and timeless Buddhist wisdom. We'll explore how monks start their mornings with intention, how breathing can become a form of healing, and how honoring your body, even in the smallest moments, can transform your entire day. So if you or someone you love is over 60, this isn't just a video, it's a gentle wake-up call. One that could help protect your health, restore your energy, and renew your sense of calm and control in the morning. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Buddhist Health. That's how we can keep creating mindful healing content just for you. And your support helps us reach others who need this message too. Let's step into your morning, one mindful breath at a time. 5 morning mistakes that quietly steal your strength. It's strange how the smallest habits that feel harmless, even comforting, can quietly chip away at our well-being. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. And the whisper is this: you're not as strong as you used to be. But here's the truth most people miss: you're not weak. Your habits are. And each morning, without realizing it, millions of older adults slip into a routine that slowly drains their strength, their clarity, and their independence. It doesn't come with sirens. It doesn't announce itself. But it's there, every day, repeating in the first few moments after waking. Let me tell you about Walter. He was a retired teacher, the kind of man who prided himself on his discipline. For 40 years he woke up at 6 a.m. sharp, swung his legs out of bed, stood tall, and went straight to the kitchen for his black coffee. No stretching, no water, just routine. It had always worked, until the morning it didn't. That day Walter stood too fast. His vision blurred. He stumbled into the hallway, hit his shoulder on the wall, and fell to the floor. Nothing broke, thankfully. But something changed. In that moment, he realized his body wasn't 30 anymore. And more importantly, he realized he had never given it a chance to catch up. This is mistake number 1, rising too quickly. When we're young, our circulatory system adjusts fast. Blood flows, pressure stabilizes, and balance is instinctive. But with age, that system slows. Your blood pressure can't keep up when you shoot out of bed like you used to. It drops. And so do you. It's called orthostatic hypotension. But it felt like betrayal to Walter until he learned to change. The second mistake came next. Still groggy, still shaken, he skipped the water, went straight for the coffee like always. But after a night of sleep, the human body is in deficit, mildly dehydrated, even if you don't feel it. Your blood thickens, your heart works harder, your brain feels foggy. And for seniors whose thirst signal fades with age, this isn't just an inconvenience, it's a silent risk. Hydration isn't optional, it's medicine. Walter's daughter, a nurse, gently reminded him. She left a glass of water by his nightstand. It took weeks to make the habit stick, but when it did, his morning fatigue lifted. The dizziness faded. He was still 80, but he felt sharper, more grounded. Then came the third mistake: coffee on an empty stomach. It's a morning ritual so many of us cling to, a sacred kind of comfort. But that strong, acidic brew doesn't greet your gut kindly. Not when there's nothing else inside. It spikes stomach acid. It raises cortisol, the stress hormone. It makes your hands jittery, your chest tight, and your digestion slow. Walter never knew that. But he learned. After weeks of chest discomfort and restlessness, that just a slice of toast or a few almonds before his beloved brew changed everything. He didn't have to give up his coffee, he just had to give his body a little protection. And still, his body ached. He brushed off that stiffness in his joints every morning, that tightness in his knees, the creak in his lower back, for years. Just old bones, he'd say. But then he nearly fell again, catching himself at the edge of the sink. That's when he understood. Stiffness isn't harmless. It's a signal. The body, like an engine, needs warming up. Ignoring that stiffness is like starting your car and flooring the gas in a snowstorm. It's not just bad, it's dangerous. Now Walter takes 3 minutes every morning. Toe wiggles, ankle rolls, shoulder shrugs, deep breaths, small movements that remind his muscles, you're safe, you're supported. Those 3 minutes give him the next 23 hours of stability. But perhaps the most invisible mistake, the one that had taken the most significant toll, was posture. After his fall, he realized how hunched he had become. Shoulders forward, head down, breathe shallow. He didn't mean to, but his posture had collapsed over time, and with it, so did his energy, balance, and confidence. When we hunch, we restrict our lungs, we reduce oxygen to the brain. We compress our digestive system. We start the day feeling smaller than we are. But something shifted when Walter began sitting tall, standing straight, lifting his gaze. He felt not just stronger, but more alive. These 5 mistakes, they aren't just physical, they're spiritual. They reflect how we meet the world, rushed, ignored, unconscious. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us to greet each morning with presence, with reverence, awareness that every breath is a gift and every habit is a prayer. Walter's story isn't rare, it's real. And it's shared by so many. But the beauty of habits is that they can change, slowly, kindly, one morning at a time. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into that first mistake that nearly stole Walter's independence and how you can avoid it, beginning tomorrow morning. Shall we? The silent danger of standing up too fast. Robert used to think of himself as invincible. He had been a firefighter for over 30 years, running into burning buildings, carrying people to safety, and facing danger without hesitation. But the moment that changed his life didn't happen in a blaze of heroism. It happened in his bedroom, one ordinary Tuesday morning. He had just woken up. The sun was streaming through the blinds. Nothing was unusual, until he swung his legs off the bed and stood up. Instantly the room spun. His vision dimmed. He reached for the nightstand but missed. His knees buckled, and then the sound of bone meeting floor. His hip was fractured, just like that. No fire, no sirens, just a moment of haste, and everything changed. The doctors called it orthostatic hypotension, a fancy term for when your blood pressure drops suddenly after standing up. When you lie down for hours, gravity pulls blood toward your lower body. The heart and blood vessels quickly compensate in younger adults when you stand, but as we age, those reflexes slow. So blood doesn't reach your brain fast enough when you rise too quickly. The result? Dizziness, fainting, falls. It sounds so simple, almost absurd. Stand up slower? That's the advice? But ask Robert if it matters. Ask him after 3 months of rehabilitation, after learning to walk again with a cane. After being told by his doctor that he'd never regain full mobility. All because of a few seconds he thought didn't matter. But they do. What happened to Robert isn't rare. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related hospitalizations among adults over 65, and one of the most common triggers, standing up too fast in the morning. What makes this especially dangerous is how invisible it is. There's no warning label, no red flag, just a tired body, trying to keep up with an old habit. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a call for awareness. In Buddhism, the first act of the day is considered sacred. Monks are trained to awaken not just the body, but the mind. They don't leap out of bed, they sit in stillness, they breathe, they acknowledge the new day with gratitude and softness. This isn't ritual for the sake of ritual. It's wisdom, a way of honoring the transition between sleep and wakefulness. You don't need to live in a monastery to embrace that wisdom. You just need to pause. So tomorrow morning, when your eyes open, give yourself a moment. Don't rush. Let your breath come first. Feel your fingers, your toes. Move them gently. Rotate your ankles, stretch your arms above your head, not to perform but to awaken. Then, roll onto your side, let your body feel grounded. Sit up slowly, Let your feet find the floor. Stay there. 30 seconds, a full minute, until you think your balance returns, and only then, rise. This small act, this seemingly insignificant pause, can be the difference between independence and injury, between fear and freedom. Robert learned this the hard way, but you don't have to. The morning is not a race, it is a return to your body, your breath, your awareness. And when you start your day with that kind of attention, you're not just preventing a fall. You're practicing respect for yourself, your age, and the gift of still being here. Because waking up isn't guaranteed. But how do you wake up? That's entirely in your hands. In the next part, we'll explore another quiet threat, dehydration, and why so many older adults begin their day in deficit without realizing it. Let's continue. Why skipping morning hydration is sabotaging your day. Janet used to call herself a coffee person. Morning after morning for over 30 years, she began her day the same way, straight to the kitchen, one hand on the coffee pot, the other rubbing sleep from her eyes. It was her ritual, comforting, familiar, reliable. But by the time she reached 74, something felt off. She was waking up groggy, her head clouded with a dull ache, her heart sometimes beat a little too fast. And though she had slept 8 hours, she felt like she hadn't slept. She brushed it off as part of getting older. Until one morning, her daughter asked a simple question, "Mom, when's the last time you drank a glass of water in the morning?" Janet paused. She couldn't remember. What she didn't realize, and what many people over 60 don't, is that the human body wakes up dehydrated. Not dangerously so perhaps, but enough to matter. While we sleep, our bodies are at work. Breathing, repairing, filtering, sweating. All of this uses water. And because the thirst response dulls with age, many older adults wake up in a deficit without feeling it. Your body is like a garden that's gone through the night without rain. On the surface, it may seem fine, but deep in the roots, the soil is dry. And if you don't water it first thing, nothing truly thrives. For Janet, this realization sparked a small change. She started keeping a glass of water by her bed, before coffee, before showering, before anything. Just a few sips at first. Then a full glass. Within days, she noticed a difference. Her mind felt clearer, her energy is steadier. The dizziness she used to ignore had vanished. It wasn't magic, it was hydration. Scientifically, the effects are profound. Without enough water, blood becomes thicker. That means your heart has to work harder to circulate it. Blood pressure can spike, kidneys strain. Even the brain, over 70% water, begins to falter, slowing memory, muddling focus, and increasing fatigue. But hydration isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's energetic. In Buddhist tradition, water is a sacred element. Monks begin each day by offering water, not just to drink, but as a gesture of gratitude and clarity. They teach that drinking water mindfully is receiving life. To honor the body, to bow to the present moment. Janet began to approach her morning water differently. No longer just a routine, it became a ritual. She held the glass gently, she breathed, she whispered a quiet "thank you" before each sip. And somehow, in that softness, her mornings transformed. You don't need fancy tools or expensive supplements. Sometimes healing starts with the simplest acts, the ones we overlook. A glass of water, a breath of awareness, a pause before the rush. If you've been skipping hydration, it's not too late. Start tomorrow. Set a glass on your nightstand tonight. Let it be the first thing you give your body when you rise, not caffeine, noise, or urgency. Just water. Cool, clear, kind. Because how you begin the day shapes how the day holds you. And giving your body the gift of hydration gives you back clarity, steadiness, and strength. In the next part, we'll explore another popular habit, drinking coffee on an empty stomach, and why it may quietly harm your digestion and stress levels, especially as you age. Ready to dive in? Your coffee routine may be hurting you. Every morning, Elias would shuffle into his kitchen like clockwork. At 6:45 a.m., the coffee pot gurgled its familiar song. The aroma filled the room, rich and comforting. It was his favorite part of the day, the first sip, the quiet stillness, the sense that he was starting fresh. But the comfort was short-lived. By mid-morning, Elias often felt anxious. His stomach churned, his hands trembled slightly, and a hollow tightness settled in his chest. Some days he'd skip breakfast entirely. Others, he'd force down a slice of toast just to ease the unease. He chalked it up to age, to nerves, to just needing more sleep. But deep down, something wasn't right. At his annual checkup, his doctor asked, "Do you eat anything before your coffee?" Elias blinked. "Not usually." "Why?" What followed was a conversation that changed everything. Coffee, especially on an empty stomach, does more than wake you up. It stimulates your stomach acid production. For older adults, whose stomach lining may already be more sensitive, this can mean irritation, inflammation, and discomfort. Add to that a spike in cortisol, your stress hormone, and the body begins the day not with calm, but with a jolt. What was meant to be soothing becomes a subtle source of internal chaos. That morning ritual? It wasn't the coffee itself. It was the timing. Elias decided to try something different. Nothing drastic, just a slice of toast with a little almond butter. A small bowl of oats, something to cushion the coffee to give his system a foundation. The result surprised him. Within a week, the tightness in his stomach eased, his energy felt steadier. That familiar wave of anxiety never came. The coffee tasted just as good, but now it served him, instead of unsettling him. It wasn't just biology, it was balance. In Buddhist monasteries, mornings are not about stimulation, they are about centering. The first foods of the day are chosen with care: warm, gentle, grounding. Herbal teas, simple porridge, light broths, these aren't restrictions. Their wisdom is in motion. The belief is simple: nourishing the body before you activate the mind. Before you ask it to perform, give it peace. And that's something we can all carry into our daily lives, regardless of whether we live in a monastery or a quiet suburban home. It starts with intention. When you drink coffee on an empty stomach, you start your day with stimulation before stability. It's like revving an engine before the oil has warmed up. But when you fuel your body gently, just a little fiber, a bit of fat, a touch of protein, you're sending a signal of support. You're telling your body, "I see you. I'm taking care of you first." Elias didn't stop drinking coffee. He didn't want to. He didn't need to, but by shifting his timing, by adding a small act of nourishment, he transformed his mornings. And in that shift, he found something else too: ease. The kind of ease that lasts longer than a caffeine high. The kind that carries you, gently, into the rest of your day. So tomorrow, before you reach for your mug, ask yourself, have I given my body something to work with? Have I offered it softness before strength? It's a small question. But sometimes the smallest questions lead to the most immense peace. Next, we'll explore the often overlooked stiffness of the aging body, and how learning to listen to your joints each morning could save you from long-term pain and loss of mobility. Let's keep going. Morning stiffness isn't harmless. Frank had always been the kind of man who believed in pushing through. In his youth, he served in the Navy, built a small carpentry business in his 30s, and was still mowing his lawn well into his 70s, so when his knees ached in the mornings, he'd brushed it off with a laugh. "Just getting old," he'd say. "It's part of the deal." One morning, in the middle of a winter week, he slipped into the shower. His leg gave out. His back hit the cold tiles. It wasn't a dramatic fall, he didn't break anything, but for the first time in years, he needed help to stand back up. That moment stayed with him. What Frank experienced is far more common than most people realize. Morning stiffness, especially in the joints, hips, and lower back, isn't just an inconvenience. It's the body's cry for patience. While we sleep, joint fluid settles, muscles cool, and connective tissues shorten. And when we jump into movement too quickly, those parts haven't had time to reawaken. Imagine a garden hose that hasn't been used overnight. It's coiled tight, cool to the touch, slightly rigid. Turn the water on too fast and it jerks, shakes, and resists, but warm it up gently and it flows with ease. Your body is no different. The science is precise. The lubricant in our joints, the fluid that becomes less efficient as we age. Muscles lose elasticity. Even the smallest movements, like bending down or turning around, require more intention. If ignored, stiffness can lead to poor balance, slower reaction times, and eventually injuries that chip away at independence. But if respected, stiffness becomes a doorway, not a barrier. Frank learned this through a local wellness class taught by a former monk-turned-movement coach. Before any strenuous activity, the class would begin every morning with 3 minutes of compassionate awakening. It wasn't exercise, it was present. He was guided to sit flat on the edge of his bed, feet flat. He'd roll his shoulders slowly, move his neck gently from side to side, wiggle his fingers, circle his ankles, breathe deeply. Not to do something, but to feel what was happening inside. One morning the teacher said, "Be like a leaf in the wind. Before you become the river, remember you are weightless." That stayed with Frank, because for the first time, his body didn't feel like a machine wearing out. It felt like something sacred, worthy of attention. And that's the shift. We're taught to ignore stiffness, to accept it as a burden. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to see it differently. In stillness, there is information. In stiffness, there is the invitation to wake up your muscles and your awareness. So how do we respond? Gently, kindly, consistently. Each morning, before the rush, before the noise, take just a few minutes to greet your body like an old friend. No judgment, no force, just curiosity. Where is there tension? Where is there resistance? And can you breathe into it? Frank didn't stop aging, but he stopped fighting it. And in that surrender, he found a new kind of strength, not the kind that lifts heavy things but the kind that listens. Because your joints have stories to tell. And if you learn to hear them early, you won't have to deal with what happens when they finally scream. In our next part, we'll discuss something that shapes every breath, every step, and every mood you carry into your day. Posture. Stay with me. Posture is more than just appearance. Lucille didn't think much about her posture. At 76, she'd grown used to the quiet curve in her spine, the way her head tilted ever so slightly forward when she walked. No one ever said anything about it, and she told herself it was just part of aging, shrinking a little, stiffening a bit. Harmless, right? But something changed the day her granddaughter came to visit. "Grandma," the little girl said, "why do you always look so sad when you walk?" Lucille was stunned. "Sad?" she asked. "You're always looking at the ground," the girl said, "like the sky forgot about you." Those words stayed with her. The next morning, for the first time in years, Lucille looked at herself in the mirror. Not at her hair or clothes, but at her posture. Shoulders rounded forward, chin slightly down, spine curved like a question mark. And as she watched herself move, she didn't see age. She saw a slow surrender, not of years, but of presence. Posture is not just about appearance, it's about physiology. When we start our day with a hunched back, we compress our lungs. That means less oxygen reaches the brain. We limit our digestive function, reduce our circulation, and even affect our hormone balance. Studies have shown that poor posture can lead to fatigue, tension headaches, and even symptoms of depression, all before breakfast. And yet, most of us don't notice, because posture doesn't hurt. Until it does, it's the quiet thief of energy, confidence, and vitality. But the story doesn't have to end there. Lucille decided to make one small change. Every morning, after sitting on the edge of her bed, she would take one deep breath, roll her shoulders back, and gently lift her chest. Not in defiance, but in reverence. She didn't force it, she allowed it. With each breath, she invited space into her body. And within days, she noticed something unexpected. She felt taller, not just in inches, but in spirit. People began to notice. "You look different," her neighbor said. "Lighter." And Lucille smiled, not because her back was perfect, but because she had remembered something essential. Her posture was a conversation with the world, and she was finally speaking again. In Buddhist tradition, the posture of the Buddha is never accidental. He is always seated with his spine tall, head lifted, chest open. Not because he was rigid, but because he was awake, present in his body, aligned in his breath. That upright posture was not pride. It was present. A quiet, embodied statement, "I am here, fully." We too can embody that. You don't need perfect alignment. You need attention. You need intention. Each morning as you rise, ask yourself, how am I holding myself? Am I shrinking into the day or opening into it? Because posture is not just a position, it's a declaration of how you carry your age, of how you carry your past, and how you're choosing to meet your future. Lucille didn't reverse her years, but she reclaimed them, one lifted breath at a time. In the next part, we'll step into the world of Buddhist monks and learn how their gentle, sacred morning rituals can help us restore our own. Let's walk on. Every step is sacred. How monks begin their morning. At the break of dawn, before the world thoroughly stirs, a quiet hum of intention rises from the monasteries in Northern California's hills. There, among redwoods and morning mist, monks begin their day not with urgency but with presence. The bell rings. Not loud, just enough to call awareness back to the body. They do not leap from their beds. They do not reach for screens. Instead, they sit upright, eyes closed, hands resting on their knees. They breathe, slowly, silently. 3 full inhales, 3 deep releases. Not to change anything, just to return to what is. Then comes gratitude. Not spoken aloud, but felt. A soft acknowledgement. I've been given another morning, another chance to walk, to serve, to breathe. One monk described it this way: each morning is like being handed a bowl of clear water. My only job is not to spill it with carelessness. From there, they move with care, rolling shoulders, stretching fingers, circling ankles while still seated. There's no rush. The body is treated like something ancient and holy. When they finally rise, it is in stages, first to sit, then to stand, then to step. No motion is wasted. Every movement is a message: I am alive, I am aware. Water comes next, not just drinking, but receiving. One monk keeps a simple ceramic cup beside his sleeping mat. He lifts it with both hands like a sacred vessel. One sip, then a pause, one more. No distractions, just the sound of water moving through the body, a ritual of restoration. In these monasteries, there is no such thing as a throwaway moment. The act of putting on a robe is done with reverence. Folding a blanket becomes a meditation. Even walking is an art form. Each step placed gently, as if the floor is made of clouds. It is called kinhin, or walking meditation. Feet soft, breathe steadily, mind still. And while you may not live in a monastery, the truth is, neither do most monks by birth. They chose that life not because it is easier, but because it reveals what we often forget: that every morning is a gift. The way we start our day shapes what we carry through it. That even the simplest actions, breathing, drinking, walking, can be transformed into acts of meaning when done with full attention. You don't need a temple to live this way. You don't need robes, chants, or incense. All you need is a willingness to slow down, to pause before rising, to drink your water with both hands. Take your first steps like stepping into a world you love because you are. Lucille, whom we met in the last chapter, began doing this in her way. She lit a candle each morning, not for prayer, but presence. It became her bell. Her signal to start the day was not with what was urgent, but with what was sacred. We live in a culture that worships speed. But monks teach us the quiet rebellion of slowness, of intentionality, of building a morning not for productivity, but for peace. Tomorrow, try it. Sit before you stand. Breathe before you move. Thank your body before you ask it to serve you. Drink water like it's the first rain after a long drought, because every step is sacred, and you don't need to change your life. You just need to honor the life you already have. Next, we'll explore how small, gentle changes in your morning routine, things you can start doing today, can transform your health and how you relate to aging. Let's move into that together. Small acts, big shifts, transforming your morning ritual. Change for many feels like a mountain, especially later in life. The routines are set, the body speaks a different language, and the thought of overhauling your habits feels less like freedom, more like overwhelm. But what if the secret to longevity, clarity, and peace wasn't in the mountain, but in the pebble? That's what Helen discovered. At 81, Helen had no interest in diets or fitness plans. She wasn't trying to look younger or chase the person she used to be. She simply wanted to stop feeling like every morning was a battle. So she decided to try something small. Instead of rushing out of bed, she stayed still for 30 seconds. She placed one hand on her chest, one on her belly. She noticed her breath. She wiggled her toes. Then, slowly, she rolled to her side, let her feet find the floor, and sat for a moment before standing. That was it. But something remarkable happened. She didn't feel dizzy. Her knees didn't ache as much. Her head didn't spin. For the first time in years, she stood with ease. So she added one more thing: a glass of water. Then, a week later, a half slice of toast before her coffee. Then 2 minutes of stretching near the window. Then a pause to simply look at the trees before picking up her phone. None of it was drastic, none of it was trendy, but within weeks, Helen felt different. Not younger, more herself, like she was returning to a version of herself she hadn't met in a long time. Science backs this up. Small, consistent actions, especially in the first 30 minutes of the day, can regulate cortisol levels, improve joint function, enhance digestion, and stabilize blood pressure. And emotionally, they anchor the nervous system. They remind the body, you are safe, you are supported, you are seen, and spiritually something deeper happens. In Buddhist philosophy, we speak often of seeds. Every thought, every gesture, every habit is a seed. Some grow into weeds, others into wildflowers. What you plant in the morning sets the tone for your whole day. If you rush, you grow urgency. If you begin with calm, you develop clarity. If you start with gratitude, you grow peace. That's what these small acts are. Seeds. 30 seconds of stillness before you rise. A full glass of water. A bite of food before coffee. 3 minutes of gentle movement. A conscious, grounded way of standing up. These aren't chores. They're sacred pauses. They're little bows to the body that has carried you through so much. And the most beautiful part? They require no gym membership, no schedule overhaul, just presence, just a willingness to treat the ordinary as extraordinary. Because it is. Your morning doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours. Thoughtful, kind, awake. So start where you are. Choose one shift, one small act of respect toward your body, and let that one act ripple into something bigger. Because small things, done consistently, aren't small at all. They're the architecture of transformation. In our final part, we'll look back at the bigger picture, how your morning habits can define not just your day, but also the quality of your aging, independence, and joy. Let's bring it all together. So today, we've walked together through 5 simple yet powerful shifts in your morning routine. How to rise slowly and safely, why hydration is more than just a habit, the right way to enjoy your morning coffee, how to gently awaken your joints, and the posture that carries not just your body, but your spirit. None of these changes require perfection. They don't demand youth, strength, or speed. All they ask is attention, a little kindness towards your body, a little reverence for your breath, and a quiet willingness to begin the day with presence instead of pressure. If something in this video spoke to you, even just one small change, take a moment now and leave a comment below. Just write this simple affirmation. Each morning, I choose to rise with care and gratitude. Your words may inspire someone else reading today. They may even remind you that tomorrow morning, when the sun rises again, you have a new chance to greet the day with love. And if you found peace, insight, or value here, please remember to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone you care about. Your support helps this channel grow as a sanctuary for healing, awareness, and wisdom, rooted in science and spirituality. Here on Buddhist Health, we believe that aging isn't about losing time. It's about gaining clarity. And each day you wake up is a blessing. Not to be rushed, but to be honored. So tomorrow when you rise, do it slowly, do it kindly, do it like life is precious, because it is. Thank you for being here, and may your next morning begin with peace.